a video on these two ducks that I've bought. So this might be one video, this might be two videos, might be three videos. I've been invited to a birthday party. This person has substantial amount of money. So what do you get someone who has a substantial amount of money who could buy anything that they really kind of quite wanted? Well, you make them something. So I decided I'm going to do some confit duck legs. And I couldn't just buy duck legs in the supermarket. Well, I could have gone to another supermarket and no doubt and found some duck. Oh, that's interesting. And found some duck legs in another supermarket. But how many supermarkets and how many places do you go around hunting for exactly what you want when you go in the first supermarket and you can just buy whole ducks in there and just cut the... That's interesting as well. Just cut the legs off a whole duck and then do something else with the breast. So this might be a... And then I was... Yeah, so this might be two videos, it might be one video. We'll kind of quite see. But I was thinking that I'd quite like to have a go at... I saw Theo Randall make a duck ragu, and I wouldn't mind having a go at that. So we're going to confit the duck legs, and we're going to use the breast to make the duck ragu, I think. And then I think. So that's that. And then, oh, got a bit too much skin off there, but not to worry. And then I just want we're not going to make any duck stock, but for the sake of, yeah, so the rest of that saw for the duck ragu was diced up duck breast, and I kind of thought I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it on the bone. I'm going to strip that fat off. I'm going to leave the duck on the bone because I want the goodness from the bones to go into the duck ragu. Then, so we won't break it down. I have a decent pair of scissors. Cut this bit of the carcass out, so down the side of the rib bones, and then, yeah, so if I don't want to cook all this bit because I want it to fit in the pan, and we're going to do two. So if that was part of the duck ragu, then that would take up more space that we don't kind of quite need, but by leaving all that bit on, we'll have it'll fit in the pan a lot nicer. So, and then let's just have a look at this. So I'm not going to take the wishbone out, but let's just see how much skin is on here and see if we can do a bit of a maybe do something sausagey with that. Maybe do something sausagey. Might freeze it actually. No, there's not really. There's no. I see a gooseneck's kind of, he's got those holes in it, that's a shame. That's a shame. So if you imagine duck neck's kind of quite long, and that would have gone round there, and we would have been able to stuff that, but we can't. So I don't know where I'm going to get a gooseneck from, but anyway, so not to worry. What we can do is we can render those bits of fat down, and we'll be able to use that in. Right, so fat is in the pan, and it is frying, or fat and skin is in the pan, and it's frying. So that's how we're going to start rendering out the fat from that. I should have chopped it up smaller, but what I thought I'd do is we'll just start the rendering process in that pan, and then as this slowly cooks in the oven, we'll transfer the fat and skin into another container, and that can just slowly render down at the same time in the oven. So we're not kind of making a mess of the cooker top or anything like that, and I'm not messing up the mincer attachment or anything like that, but enough fat will come out of that we'll be able to fry off the crowns of duck. We have done something with that fat, so let's just chop that fat up using the scissors. You know, unless your knives are really sharp, it's difficult to cut through skin. So what I find, and if you haven't got a mincer, what we can do is we can just fry it for a bit, firm it up a bit, and then just use the scissors to kind of go through it. To chop that fat and skin out would be difficult, but once it's cooked, a lot easier. And you don't get as much fat out of it that way, but it's a way around a problem. And lots of life problems, there are ways around. So about like that, and then that will render more fat out. But there is enough fat in the bottom of there, so now crisp up these duck crowns. So we'll scoop that fat, that skin and fat out there, put that into a different container, which we can put in the bottom of the oven and slowly render, and then we'll fry off these crowns. Right, so I have just patted dry the skin on these crowns. So the crown is that, the crown is the double breast that's still attached to the bone. Sometimes you haven't got these bits on, but we're just going to leave those on for flavor and such. So we'll have to cook one at a time. So turn the temperature up slightly. Not going to season it, we will season in the pan later on. So get them nice and brown, we'll get the bottom nice and brown as well. And then while I'm doing that, I'll chop some veg. Theo Randall did not use carrot. I'm going to use carrot. I'm going to use onions, I'm going to use celery. I like carrot in a ragu. I think he said something along the lines of he didn't like chunky bits of carrot in his ragu, and something about the onion was sweet enough as it was. It was using red onion, so you didn't need the sweetness of the carrot. Something along those lines. But anyway, so fry off, chop some veg, on the back. Right, so skin's brown. That's right. So I've just upturned the lid, and it's just rested on the back of the stove. So that out of there. So we're not going to make any more washing up, because we're going to use the lid to put the duck on. Lots of fat came out of that. So we will have that delicious fat before it starts to burn into the other bits of skin, and then that's going to the oven to render down. And then I chopped the celery, but I've grated the carrot. So carrot in, celery in. So it was about 4 sticks of celery, 2 carrots, and then I'm going to grate in the onion as well. I'm not bothered about colour in the veg. I'm just more bothered about it cooling the pan down and taking that residual fried caramelised bits off the bottom of the pan. So grate the onion as well, which I suppose is breaking the rules, but it's only like South American cooking when they like the base vegetables in things they put in a blender. So, and it stays on the chopping, doesn't it? And let's be honest, who doesn't get sick of chopping things up? I certainly do. So grate, move around, soften, and then put the duckies in, vegetables around, and chop up, and put in some chopped tomatoes, and see if there's any room left for those bits of bone and then maybe those bits of wing. But you don't need to see me doing this. How many onions we're going to do? We might just do 3 onions, I think. That's fine enough. We're going to puree it up anyway, aren't we? Yeah. So 3 onions. I'm going to puree it, so I'm not that bothered if it's starting to cry. So I'm not that bothered if it's a little bit chunky. No one's going to see it, so it doesn't really matter. So, not like that. Good use of the grater as well. If your chopping skills aren't that good. And as a professional, my chopping skills aren't that good. So, those vegetables will lift off those caramelised bits to the bottom of the pan. Ooh, that's really starting to make me cry. Anyway, so, we're back when we're putting things in the pan. I don't know why I've decided to do this on one of the hottest days of the year so far. So, now we need to fit these both into the pan. So I reckon one upside down. No, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it needs something on the bottom. So let's put some, let's wash my hand again. Right, so Cheap tomatoes. Some people will say best quality tomatoes you can get your hands on. And this is going to be cooking for a long time, and it's going to concentrate. So I'd rather put in more cheap tomatoes and cook it down for longer, in my humble opinion. But don't listen to me, I don't know what I'm talking about. In fact, don't watch the video, turn it off now. That's on there, so that's not in direct contact with the bottom of the pan. We'll put some of those vegetables in there for the only reason of we need the space in the pan. So that there, and then we'll put the other ducky that way up there. Will that work? Or is it best off that way around as well? I don't think it really matters. But we just, I want to use up as much space as possible. So then, some of the vegetables down there, some more of the vegetables down there, like that. Right, and then, like that. And then what we're going to use, as much of this as possible. Right, where are my scissors? So, we can do this if we've got good quality scissors. So, oh, there we go. So, chop that up. That's a bit too big to chop. Chop that up. I don't think we'll end up using all of this, but we'll cram in as much as we possibly can. A few tomatoes down the side to fill in those gaps. And then, see, if we put this stuff in the bin, it's going to smell because we're at the middle of summer. But if we can cook it and get that flavour, and then we can potentially then put can we get these? No, let's leave those whole. Let's leave that whole. We're not going to put the hearts in. So what my advice would be is if you're going to put some smelly things in the bin like raw meat, trimmings, all that kind of stuff, what you can do is you can put the trimmings in the freezer in a container first, freeze it until bin day, and then ran out of storage space on my phone. I should have deleted more stuff before I started, shouldn't I? So yeah, so any kind of horrible bits that you don't want, that are going to be sitting in the bin for a week, festering, put them in a container, stick them in the freezer, freeze them, and then put them in the bin when you put it out, and then they'll defrost and be frozen in the bin, but not give you that horrible smell. There we go. Where did I cook before? So, put that slightly. Those necks have gone in, and those bones, they're going to add delicious goodness. And a few more bits of fat and stuff. More bits of bone. Those bits of bone can go in, some more fat go in the oven. And now, top up with tomatoes. Once I've cleaned my hands again, pause slightly. Right, so that is 4 tins of cheap tomatoes. They're not as concentrated cheap tomatoes, but in a lot of dishes you end up putting a lot of water into it anyway. So you put tomatoes and then you top up with, rinse the tins out with a bit of water and top up anyway. So I'm kind of thinking, well, you kind of put in the water in anyway. And then I just had this slight thought that by putting those bones in as well, we're actually filling up space. So we get to, it's quite a big container, and if we didn't put those extra bones in, we just kind of threw them away, we'd have to fill that space with, this is just a bit of the juice from the pan lid, we would have to fill that space with something else like the tomatoes or more vegetables or something like that. So it's actually a way of cutting down on the amount of ingredients. So up to temperature, lid on, into the oven for until it's cooked. We're going to put pepper in. We'll put some salt in, but we're going to correct the seasoning later on. Put it on the top. I suppose you could argue the point that you should really season in layers and all that kind of stuff, but it's all going to get mixed around anyway as it cooks. So pepper mill's empty again. I swear there's someone else in this house using pepper. So that needs more pepper in. But anyway, so up to the boil. then into the oven 125 degrees. 125 degrees. Nice low and slow cooking, and then we'll kind of have a look at it when it's all nice and tender. However many hours later that will be. Have a look at this duck ragu. It's had a little bit of time on top of the stove because I was using the oven something else, so it's had about 3 hours in total. Let's have a look. So it certainly looks like those bones have cooked. So yeah, that looks like it's nice and tender. I put a sprig of thyme in there, just in the top. I forgot if I said that or not, but we put some thyme in. Let's get that out there. We don't really want the thyme. The leaves are bad, but the rest of it. Right. Ooh. It feels tender. And just move a bit of that skin out of the way, and then we can have a look at the skin. Well, that's certainly cooked all the way through and nice and tender. How does it taste? Oh, it's going to be hot, isn't it? Yes. That's good. That's good. How does the ragu part of it taste? So, it'll need reducing down. But it tastes good. How am I going to do this? It's Saturday night and I don't want to be faffing around too much. Let's take. There's not going to be much meat on those bones. Let's get out the bones, and we'll find those necks, and then it will cool down quicker, won't it? Yes, that's what we'll do. So we'll get out the debris that we just cooked in there for the sake of cooking, and then we'll have another look at it, I think. So that in there, and then that can go in the bin. Right, we can pull out a little bit of, that's wing, but we can pull out a little bit of neck and see how tender that is. We'll just get a couple of forks. There's going to be some bones going all the way through it, but it'll have a nice bit of, we can shred the meat off there, like that, and just kind of pat it with a fork and see if we can feel any bones. We don't want any bones in it. I say we, I mean me. I don't want any bones in it, and neither should you. So a little bit fiddly, but there'll be loads of connective tissue and what we call gristle really, but it's gelatin. I get lots of nice jelly out of that and lots of richness. The only downside to that is that you can feel it on your lips. So if there's too much gelatin in something, it's kind of almost makes you want to stick your lips together. But so we can just go through and we can pull out the meat off there. Don't have to be too fastidious. So get the bones out, do the rest, pick through the rest of it, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain the liquid off. So there's quite a lot of liquid there, and I think we'll reduce the liquid down and then add the solids and the meat back to it and kind of cook it a bit more that way. But I'll faff around with it for a bit while I'm listening to a podcast. And how's this meat taste? That's a delicious bit of meat, is that? Anyway, so we'll pick through, we'll separate, we'll get out the skin, all that kind of stuff, throw away all the bones and the debris, separate out, and we'll reduce the liquid down, and then add everything back to it. Yes. Right, so strained all the meat out and the vegetables out, and we're left with that liquid there. That's going to be too watery, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring it back up to the boil. We're going to boil it to reduce it down and concentrate it, and then we're going to add everything back to it. There we go. So, does that need any more explanation? No. Right, so I have reduced that. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking what I would do actually, instead of as that reduced, if I was cooking for a lot of people, I'd cook the pasta in that liquid and then mash up these vegetables separately and then stir back in the vegetables and the meat then into the pasta. I think that's what I'd do. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So, right. I'll just need to heat this. Oh, this meat's gone cooled down in the process. So we'll just have vegetables have cooled down in the process. So we'll just have to heat that back up, and then we'll get the minced. We'll get the potato masher in it, and we'll give it a mash up as we go, because I don't want big lumps of vegetables in it. And then I'm going to preserve some of this in jars, so I'm not going to use it all. I did have that's what I was going to do. I had another idea while I was swimming. So, mash all this up. So, still kind of quite chunky. And then I've mostly shredded the meat. Are we recording? Yes, we are recording. So I've mostly shredded the meat. It tastes wonderful, does this? And then we'll stir the meat back into it. Bring it up to temperature. We'll put some in jars, and then I've saved these crispy bits from the the right gas is on, that's fine. I've saved these crispy bits from rendering from the skin down. I'm going to put those in as well. I think that will really make it kind of quite enrich it. People kind of go, eh, but I think that would be delicious. And then also, the portion I'm going to cook for myself, I'm going to put in I saved the livers, the duck livers, so we're going to put those livers in as well, and that'll enrich it up as well. So I think that'll be extra lovely. Now I can see why that's very nice. And I can see why Mr. Theo Randall only used breast rather than the bones, because it's a real faff going through all the bones and picking them out. You get the kind of flavour from the bones, but you then have to pick the meat from them, which is a bit laborious. So, right, that's mashed up enough. Meat in, back up to temperature, and then I'll be back when I'm faffing around. Maybe there's too much. Oh, that's okay. Might need to mix the meat up a little bit better, and we'll put some of that fat in, that chicken fat in. Now I think because it will be too rich otherwise, too rich just for me. But we'll keep that. So right, this back up to temperature, and put some in. Make it right. Good job my t-shirt needs cleaning. We'll put some in jars, and then we'll finish the rest off. And I think what I'll do, I was thinking I might cook the pasta in this pan, but maybe not. Right, so we'll be back shortly. That's made a fair old pan of duck ragu as that. I jarred some up, and I have put some of that crispy skin in. It's got the heart on. Let's just put those livers in like that. We'll just pull some of the sinews out. I really should have cooked the heart in with the ragu, shouldn't I? But we live and learn, don't we? So it's attached like that. So we'll just pull that, and hopefully we'll get rid of some of the sinewy bits like that. There's no more in there, is there? That's a bit more liver. So this will make the sauce super rich. Or is that a gizzard? I think that's a bit of gizzard, I think. So I'm not going to be too fastidious about things. The pasta's almost cooked. Yeah, I've started getting a bit paranoid about if I'm properly recording. I keep losing footage. I don't know if it's not properly recording or whatever. Anyway, so that will do with that. Let's just wash my hands. Right, so liver's almost cooked. Let's give it a mash with the potato masher to get it all mixed into the sauce. It'll have a lovely bit of richness from that. Make a mess of my potato masher. But kind of think about, you're almost kind of like stirring pate into it. Just mash. Probably should have cooked more pasta. That doesn't look like a lot of pasta. But I'm not going to eat all this ragu that's left. I'm going to save some for tomorrow. So, pull half of it out. Some chunky bits of liver in there, that's fine. I'm okay with that. So, I need to pull some out, hang on. Right, so, bring that in place. Pasta in. It just needs a little bit of water. Just a little bit. Like that, so it's going to be dry. Move it around, get all the gubbins off the side of the pan. Don't put the liver in if you're not a fan of liver. If you don't, although some people who don't like liver like pate, so I don't kind of quite get that. I don't get that. Maybe it's just the idea of chunky bits of liver. Give it a taste. See what we think. Needs a bit of seasoning. That's lovely, isn't it? That is lovely. I've been a bit of liver there. I'm going to enjoy that.